Let's get straight into this story that has gone since Thursday night. First up, I want a quick yes-no answer. Has it taken too long to get from Thursday night to last night and then today to finally get this case closed? Should this be made a faster effort be put between the AFL and the parties?
Oh, yeah, it has, and that's not the first time that's the case. It's a 24/7 business. This tribunal case, any tribunal case, should be heard within 24 hours maximum of the event.
Yeah, OK, let's get into it. What do you reckon?
Well, the AFL chose to play its captain's card in taking it away from the match review office and straight to a tribunal, and ultimately today Laura Kane explained why they didn't then take it to the third of the judicial bodies under the AFL system, but they couldn't play the captain's card twice. And while they are the AFL and they can do everything, they've just chosen to play it once, and ultimately two bodies out of the three, the match review office and the tribunal, have decided there's nothing to see here under the current rules. That's the conversation for another day. It'll look very different next time this type of incident happens, but as of the rules as they stand, to me, it's the right call.
Let's listen to Laura Kane, and particularly about the tensions between her and Michael Christian on Friday.
Firstly, I won't comment on employment status of any of my team. In terms of what occurred Friday, Chriso is passionate. He's passionate about football, he's passionate about his role, and he holds it at utmost importance. We worked through this incident, and as you saw on Friday evening, we released a joint statement which referred this matter to the tribunal.
So, Laura Kane and Michael Christian, I think the AFL did the right thing by sending it to the tribunal, get all the evidence out there. You've been saying this all week, Jimmy, to make sure that it was all there for everybody to hear.
Yeah, and as you said, it was the right process, but it was going to be a difficult one for the AFL. And we just take a look at the AFL's legal counsel. It was going to be hard for them to prove, and I think the word's being thrown around, a football act. And I guess you take into account the fact that you've got two guys running flat out, serious athletes, and trying to launch and smother the ball. We can't deny Maynard was trying to smother the ball, but when they're leading with things like it might just be simply too unsafe to do so, of the forward motion and the forward trajectory, he could have made a more upright jump or not push himself forward. So almost saying to Maynard, or suggesting, run, stop dead and jump a bit higher when you have a look at more of the transcripts, which is a pretty difficult thing to ask a player to do.
So having played the game and been in types of those situations, what was argued there as a prosecution element? You're saying it fell over at that point?
Yeah, well, it was near on impossible to ask Maynard to run, stop dead, jump straight up, but jump even higher to miss Brayshaw. So it was pretty difficult for them.
And the behind the goals vision was where they said that Brayshaw had changed lanes. That was the vision that was always going to be Collingwood's defence. Lloydie, how did you read the whole situation?
I'd more look at the emotional side. I think everyone's covered it, that it polarised everyone. You know, it was an emotional side. You see Collingwood's view and that their player, heard still sided on bottom say there's no malice to it. That's exactly how I saw it. But you see the emotional toll that it's taken on Melbourne too, to see he's a much loved player, Angus Brayshaw, and what he's gone through from a concussion side of it. That didn't get in the way of the fact that I didn't think Maynard should ever be suspended, but you can understand what an emotional time it was for the Demons and the Brayshaw family.
Damo, I've never seen more sort of leaking and media preparation and media management coming through, and then extraordinary statements before a tribunal that could cost a player a spot in the grand final. We understand the emotion because of what happened to Angus Brayshaw
and everyone, and his history, and
all that. And you know what? You can have empathy
Yep.
and sympathy, and you can look at it. You can see for both players in the situation. But I've never seen so much. Shows were being approached, and journos were being rung and lobbied to take a position.
Yeah, I think some of those opinions changed over the course of the event, which probably gets back to your initial question.
Yeah.
Is it too long? And sometimes the AFL likes these matters playing out publicly for a long time. I think the game was arguably damaged. I never saw it either, just on this, and tell me if I'm being over-emotive here. I never saw it as a case that was going to determine the fabric of the game. I don't even know what that means. To me, it was an accident on a footy field. Now, I know the ramifications and the consequences for the consequence of the action were severe, absolutely, for someone who has got a troubled space in this concussion period, but it was an accident on a footy field. It wasn't going to determine how the game
It wasn't Barry Hall whacking Staker. It wasn't the John Greening incident of 1972. It wasn't anything like that. It was so line ball.
It wasn't
even going
Hall
into the tribunal. No one knew which way it was going to go.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just thought the whole thing seemed to just get out of hand.
And it's the reason that if I was Gary Pert, the CEO of Melbourne, or I'm the coach Simon Goodwin, I'm walking in there first thing this morning, they may have done this and said there is to be no more comment from you as players, you as staff, and tell your family members also that they are not to comment, because that's not helping us anymore. And Sean Smith was another one who commented today, the father of Joel, and this just doesn't help anything. He makes this comment absolutely disgusting. The AFL are a disgusting organisation. Smith, made comments on Facebook. He also said, obviously understand what happened to your son, but the last thing, the thug KOs someone potentially ending their career and he gets off. So that's just inflammatory.
Well, it's not only inflammatory, it's defamatory.
It is. And I just think that Melbourne went out last year in straight sets. They had a disappointing game last week and they're as vulnerable as ever. It's all about Carlton now, and they've got to let the emotion go and get on with playing football.
OK, so guys, let's go through this. The Brayshaw family are one of the most venerated footballing families, 3 generations, going back to Ian as a great football and cricketer.
And cricketer,
the Brayshaw family, of course, and Jimmy we know so well as a colleague of ours, and Mark, who's done everything in football from playing to administration to being in the Players Association, Coaches Association, and then the boys.
Father of 3 players in the AFL system.
Exactly, and one of them is Hamish Brayshaw, who really came off the long run, as we said, before the tribunal. Let's have a listen to what Hamish said first up, what he said today, and also a bit of Jack Viney.
The scrutiny comes under the fact that I think the AFL are desperate for Collingwood to win a premiership. They want the supporters to go nuts. They've got 106,000 members. They want to do everything they can, in my opinion, for that to happen.
I probably jumped the gun a little bit early on that one, but that's the nature of his head injuries and his past with concussion, and it's been a really hard one for me and for the family to sort of deal with. So while I was pretty passionate on the podcast yesterday,
it's hard not to get emotional about footy and finals footy, but at the same time, we've got roles to execute, and that's where the majority of our mental energy is right now.
And again, these are observations from people who know the Brayshaw situation well, and a teammate in Jack Viney who saw Angus on the ground for 2 minutes unconscious last week, and a brother of Angus. So we understand all that. And the coach also, straight away, post-match, after the event, bought into that side of the argument.
Look, I guess that'll be sorted out during the week, but we've got a pretty shattered player in there. Yeah, look, you can only go by the facts. He jumped off the ground and knocked a guy out. So I guess time will tell.
But again, you take some of the emotion out, and Simon Goodwin had some pretty strong comments to make in defence of his player, Jacob van Rooyen, earlier in the year when he had this contact with Charlie Ballard up there on the Gold Coast Stadium. Now, again, totally different issue here, but Van Rooyen was cited for that and initially outed for a game of footy as a result of that contact. And the club decided to take it through the system, and as part of that defence, Simon Goodwin had this to say in defence of his player who'd made head contact.
When you see the outrage in our supporter base, you see the outrage of the footy community, clearly you look at it and it's either unjust or the fabric of the game's getting challenged. The laws state that you can contest the ball, and Jacob's only thing that he was looking at was contesting the ball. So the fabric of the game's being challenged.
Yeah, so the fabric of the game came up in that conversation as well as it did during the course of the week. So I think everyone's just taken a breath as the week has unfolded, and Melbourne, as to your point, Lord, he's got a game of footy to play on Friday night.
So do you now believe the AFL will tighten rules, and if this incident was to happen next year, they would somehow find a way to have him suspended?
I basically feel they've committed to that being the case. Laura Kane's words today, Laura Kane's wording...
But what are they going to be? What do
a specific reference to smothering. I mean, we've tightened up...
That smother happens once every blue moon.
But Ed, from now on, if that's done next year, and I think I'm comfortable with that. If that... We know that no 2 incidents are ever replicated, but if a form of that hit of Maynard on Brayshaw is replicated next year, that will be sanctionable by way of a 3-week suspension.
So where are we going with footy? Are we going to... Do we now look... And I'm not being alarmist here, but do we say, OK, we've got to get concussion out of the game. We have to completely change what used to be. We've done it with sling tackling. We've done it with behind the play. We've brought in extra umpires.
There's been 30 rule changes, Ed, in relatively recent times.
Mate, in my time reporting, trial by video came in. That was revolutionary. But do we go to a situation where we go to a game that is more aligned with Gaelic football, which has all the all the elements.
Well,
of
you
the
said
game
that with
we
Jimmy
love.
during the week.
Yeah,
If you fast forward 50 years, that's where we're going to be. Do we just bring forward that timeline?
do we make that decision and before too many of the women footballers get hurt as well? Because that's a major issue. Jimmy, what do you think? Or do we go to a position where we say, this is the game, there is inherent risks, some people are going to get hurt, and then put in the protocols. As we've said, that maybe we need to have a concussion protocol where you've got a passport before you can play and you get tested on a regular basis. We need to have a compensation situation, a no-fault compensation for players, which Peter Gordon and the AFL have been trying to get up for the last 12 months or so. So let's approach it. I just think we have to rip the Band-Aid off and say, right, OK, because this week has just been, it's been really hard.
So you would bring in not to tackle?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that's the natural progression, isn't it?
We're probably going to get there at some
stage. They've already changed the
The players have adapted, in a sense, so I don't think we need to take...
No, the bump will go before the tackle. If it is going to go that way that you're talking about. And
Kane Corns was saying, well, the one that is actually the most dangerous is allowing somebody to run from 20 metres and jump up and stick their knee through your head and take them
Well,
home.
that's the next one on the line after this smother one gets
How does that happen? How does
we take Jeremy Howe out of the game? Like all these... What you think that we should never get to that.
You know the way the game works, Lottie. We got a player suspended for 3 matches for tackling someone. On the day itself, it was rewarded as a perfect tackle by the umpire when Sicily tackled McCluggage.
That's just a bad decision.
Well, it's the system gave him 3 weeks beyond the actual tackle itself, the tribunal system. Hey, we talked about emotion. No one showed more of it than your good self, Ed, last night. I need you to watch this again and then explain yourself, please.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, justice has been done. Maynard is free to play for the Pirates.
All right, Choi's Restaurant in Hawthorn last night, and was that the second time you actually did that?
Yeah, no, what I tell you what, everyone's mucking around, OK? I walk in about 5 minutes before that happens, and everyone, as I walk past, were asking what's going on with the Maynard situation, all the rest of it. So I get a message through that he's been cleared, and we jumped up and it was all clear. And then I find out that there was a question mark left off on my message. Came through a couple of minutes later and we did that again. And Daisy Thomas, who was sitting there, was a couple of boys from the 2010 Premiership side. And the whole idea was that Maynard was right. Now, people have said, was that being disrespectful to the Brayshaws? That was not any thought even about that, and I apologise if anyone actually takes it that way. It was all about that Braden Maynard had got through, a key player for Collingwood going into a preliminary final amongst a lot of Collingwood people who'd come up and asked for photos at that stage. It was pure fun in what has been a very, very wrought situation. So that's it as simple as it is. You're still allowed to have some fun in the game, and there was no slight or malice towards anyone. And unbridled joy that a champion of the Collingwood Football Club will be right to play in a final.